My name is Dan Klein. I'm the Assistant Director of Residence Life here at Curry College. What we're planning to do is get through some information for you to better prepare. And as they've introduced themselves, we have Evelyn Dina and Jim Brennan, who are both Community Directors within the Office of Residence Life and Housing.
All right, so for our first slide here is just an overview of what we plan on talking about with you all today. So the very first slide that we'll look at is how to stay informed, how to make sure that you are receiving all of the updates that we have for you. And we're going to give you some tips and tricks on how to be prepared with the information and resources that we are providing for you all. Next, we will go over the housing selection timeline.
So stupid.
In which we will better discuss to that second question, who will choose when, I should say. Then we will look at what rooms and buildings are available to students by their class year. We will talk about how to apply for suites and how selection will work for suites specifically. We will then look at a more detailed step-by-step process of how this will work virtually, what we are doing, what you will be doing in this process to choose your room. If you can't make the process, you see your times and you say, I can't make that for some reason, we will discuss what a proxy is and how you can choose someone to choose your room for you. If you are still looking for a roommate, we have a solution for that, which we will share with you. And then we will finish off with some tips for how you can be successful in housing selection, and then a time for your questions. All right, so as I said, it's very important for us to stay informed in this process. We will regularly be sending emails with information and updates directly to your Curry College email address. The housing selection checklist page is on your My Curry portal. So to access that, you get there by going to my.curry.edu. You go to your Student Life tab, and then you will find under that tab the housing selection checklist, and there will be all your information and updates. You should take advantage of our Curry College Residence Life and Housing social media pages to find out more as well. If you know CD Kyra, she has been making a lot of TikToks of late, and they're pretty great. So if you want to see Kyra sometimes making a fool of herself, that's great. You should go there.
Awesome. So jumping into some of the information that the Office of Residence Life and Housing is prepared for you all. There's a good amount of information that will help you get prepared for selection as well as take part in our selection process. The most important thing we want you to do is to review all of this information and sort of be prepared for when it's your time to select the room of your choice. A lot of this information has been linked either in the Curry emails that you've received or also available on the housing selection checklist that Jim has referenced as to being on the My Curry portal, so go ahead and check that out. Those links link to our Google Drive documents that you can access at any point. This is a general overview of what we have available to you all. So under our general information, we have first and foremost our 2020-2021 room rates. And so what this document essentially is it provides a breakdown for the costs for each specific tier of housing. So for folks that may be unfamiliar with our housing room rates, Bell Hall is a very different cost than a general room in Milton Hall. So these costs represented in that document sort of represent the full academic year. What's really important to know about our room rates is that we want to encourage that students are speaking with anyone financially involved in their college career to sort of determine what's going to best work for you personally in financing your college experience. So we want you to also note that if you are selecting a more expensive housing option during your selection time and later realize it may not be feasible for you or may be too pricey, your choice afterwards for relocation may be whatever is available after our process. So we want you to have the room of your choice, and we also want to make sure that it's a good financial decision for you. So please be sure to connect with folks about your decision on selecting housing based on prices. Next, we have our frequently asked questions list. You'll find a robust amount of information in here about the process, including information regarding class standing, what sort of spaces are available to you, and any other generic information or questions you may have about our process. Next is the residence hall room capacity list. What this is essentially a breakdown of room types. So per building, we have listed out how many rooms broken down by singles, doubles, triples are available per building. And so that is available for you to take a look at just to get a sense of maybe where you would want to live and how many rooms or spaces are available in each hall. The next sort of section of our information is the residence hall information. This is by each residence hall we have available for selection. In each building's folder is a floor plan, a fact sheet, and a virtual tour, or a soon-to-be virtual tour. So for the floor plan, this is a good way to sort of take a look at the layout of the building itself. These are not to scale, but it may give you a good sense of what the building looks like for folks who maybe have not had the chance to walk around the building before we were cut short in the spring. The fact sheet will provide a brief overview of each residence hall, and you can note some of the information specific to furniture, different amenities, parking information for that residence hall. It gives a good sense of what types of students are living in the building, all that good stuff. And then our virtual tour is provided in each hall. We want students to sort of get a sense of the residence halls prior to housing selection, but knowing that the spring was cut short, you may have not had that opportunity. So these tours have been created for almost every housing choice that's available. We're looking to work on a couple last additions, but you can take a look at these videos in each hall's folders to get more sense of what each hall looks like and a visual for you all. And then lastly is our available rooms list. So this is probably one of the most important documents that you'll want to look at prior and during our housing selection process. This is going to be helpful to you all to know the breakdown for each hall, specific class years that each hall is available to, the gender breakdown and room type options. So in suites, singles, general housing selection, you'll be able to see what types of rooms are available per building. These will be updated in real time as well. So during our housing selection process, you'll be able to review what rooms are still accessible for you to select into when it's your time to select. Any rooms that have been taken or assigned to accommodations at this point and throughout the process will be grayed out, which means they will be unavailable to you. So as you are selecting in the process, keeping that available rooms list up so that you can see what rooms are being taken live as we're updating them will sort of help you determine your plans B and C, which we recommend that you have.
So one of the questions that we had heard to begin with was, what day am I picking? What is the housing selection timeline? And so this is the list of dates that students should take a look at. Again, all the information that we are covering today is found on the housing selection checklist of the MyCurry portal. So you can review that at any time at your leisure, but we wanted to provide the housing selection timeline for you as well. And so on Wednesday, May 20th, that is when suite selection begins. And it is on that one day only. On Thursday, May 21st, we will have singles room selection. On Tuesday, May 26th, so that's the day after Memorial Day, juniors and seniors will be picking in general housing selection, followed by sophomores, which are split into two different days, Wednesday, May 27th and Thursday, May 28th. All times for check-in begin at earliest 1 p.m. Eastern time. I need to stress that for folks, that is 1 p.m. Eastern time. So Curry, the time in which Curry's standard time zone is. If you are out of the Eastern standard time, then you will want to make sure that you are appropriately setting a calendar invite, you are appropriately setting your schedule, whatever you need to be able to make it. But again, times will begin as early as 1 p.m. With the first lottery number for that time. What we plan to do is have a more detailed lottery number listing of when students should plan to check in for, and that will be communicated in the near future as we're finalizing the deposited students' amounts, based on the lottery numbers so that we can appropriately plan for students' time. The ideal amount of time that we're looking for is likely about 30 minutes for students to be participating in, from the check-in time to when they're fully participated and gone through that selection process. And again, we're trying to make sure that we are being as efficient as possible in that process.
Okay, so here is a chart of rooms available to students by their class year. So it looks like there are very few options for sophomores and juniors, but that is largely because 886 and Bell Hall are both very large. In addition, seniors and juniors share spaces, so just numerically, there need to be more options available to twice the amount of people, right? So sophomores are available to 874 and 886 Brush Hill Road, Bell Hall, NCRH, and coming back for the first time in about 8 years, North Hall. So North Hall was previously used as a residence hall prior to the construction of the Learning Commons, and then had a short stint as an office space for faculty members, but will be coming back to us. For juniors and seniors, you have 156 House, Bell, Brown House, Cottage, Green and Gray Houses, Main House, Milton Hall, SCRH, Suites, and White House. So Cottage, additionally, is coming back after a short stint being used for faculty offices. It is located between White House and the Kennedy Academic Building. And another thing to note for this year is that a lot of spaces have been reduced either down to triples to doubles or doubles to singles. So there are 30 spaces that have been reduced in some way.
Awesome. So moving into our suite selection process, first and foremost, for folks who are interested in selecting into a suite, there are applications taken, or the application form is available on the housing selection checklist portal page, as Jim referenced in the very beginning. So if you're interested in applying to select into a suite, you can go onto the My Career portal and find the form there, also in your emails. Only students with a junior and a senior housing class standing are eligible to live on the south side of campus and participate in suite selection. So if you are a junior or senior, this is relevant to you. Students must have a housing lottery number to be pulled into a suite, so that's important when you are considering selecting into a suite. Some other important information about the form includes students should only be listed on one application roster. So if you are being pulled between two friend groups and your name appears on multiple rosters, your name will be removed and all affected applications will become incomplete. So it's really important to finalize your suite application with the folks that you want to live with so that your application is not sort of null and void in that case. Once this form is submitted, we also are asking that no changes are made to the roster. Please be sure that all of the suite mates meet the criteria included, which include the housing class standing, meaning junior and seniors only. You have a lottery number, etc., before completing the application because all submissions are final. So you cannot change the roster. You can only submit one application and all submissions are final. At the time of selection, if students have to, for some reason, reduce the group size in order to fill an available suite, so say for some reason there's 3 rooms left in a suite and you need to cut your group in half, your final group must still include the student with the lottery number that you are selecting with. So whoever has the best lottery number cannot be cut from that group. Awesome. Couple last things to know about suite selection. All suites are going to be designated as male or female prior to housing selection. You can see these on the available rooms spreadsheet. As I mentioned earlier, there is a suite selection spreadsheet for that. We will only allow one person to represent the suite in suite selection time. So that will either be the group leader that's listed on the application, or whoever is designated as that suite applicant will be allowed to represent the group at suite selection. And at the time of selection, students need to completely fill a suite. So you cannot select into portion of a suite, and any incomplete groups may have the opportunity to select at the end of selection if there are rooms or spaces or suites available after we go through all of the lottery numbers. As you want to note through floor plans and available suite rooms on the spreadsheet, in suites building, there are 7-person suites, 6-person suites, and then 4-person suites. And in South Campus Residence Hall, there are either 6-person suites with the exception of 1 3-person suite. So some things to pay attention to. For students who are choosing suites in South Campus Residence Hall, you do have the choice between a single or a double room. So please indicate your preference on your application, but also please note that there's a cost difference between the 2 rooms. So referencing the room rates for the 2020-2021 academic year, you want to take note of the difference in cost between the single and double in South Campus Residence Hall prior to selecting that in your application. And then lastly, I just want to note that suites may be partially filled at the time of housing selection due to accommodations. So we may need folks to fill those suites afterwards. And any groups with entirely junior class standing applicants will need to check your email or be on our social media on suite selection night to see when and if all suites have been completely filled. Because once suites have been completely filled, our housing selection night for suite selection will be closed. So if there is an entire suite of juniors and you're hoping to get into a suite, please be on your email or social media to be aware of when all suites are filled if they are prior to you selecting.
So many of you are probably been wondering how this is going to work. How are we going from an in-person process to a more remote virtual process? And so obviously, as we understand, the national and global concerns happening across the world have deemed it necessary to provide this process to you in a remote fashion. However, as I've indicated, we want to make sure that we are mimicking the in-person process that many students have become used to, how they've been selecting rooms in the past. And so we are trying to simulate that process in a remote fashion. We expect this process from start to finish to take approximately 30 minutes or less. However, your flexibility and patience is needed as we have many students who are looking to try and select rooms over the course of these several days. We have a 5-step process, which the 5th step is congrats, you are all set. The 4 that happened before that, though, we want to really walk through with you so you have a better understanding of what that looks like. The first step is that you'll be arriving to a waiting room, much like you did for today's registration, or rather for today's information session. You'll arrive there and you'll be waiting for us to be able to invite you in. So to arrive there, we will be sending you an appropriate Zoom invitation link. And again, we will be using Zoom similar to today's call. And so we ask that you arrive at your designated time on your designated date. We encourage you to do so just a couple minutes ahead of time. And so you'll be placed into this waiting room. We encourage you prior to this time and prior to checking in to really make sure that you're testing and anticipating any technology issues beforehand. We want you to also make sure that before you jump into the Zoom call, that you're also taking a look at a lot of the resources that Community Director Evelyn had shared with you previously. Those are linked from our Marikari portal page, the Housing Selection and Checklist portal page, as well as the emails that you've been receiving. So those will be important to pull up and have available on screen so that you can have the most updated process information available for you. If you're looking to live with somebody else, you'll also want to make sure that you are using the best lottery number between you and your roommate pair or trio or quad, utilizing the best lottery number and utilizing that time for that number to arrive for your individual selection time. You can all show up at the same time, but utilize that best individual lottery time. So you'll be waiting in the room. At some point, again, we are looking to hopefully process as efficiently and quickly as possible. You'll then be greeted and pulled out of the waiting room and greeted face-to-face by one of the members of our Residence Life and Housing team. And at that point, you'll be officially checked into the process. We're going to be asking for your information that you've been already designated, so your housing class lottery standing, your lottery number, your name, your ID information, so that we can verify your identity for moving through our process. And this is going to be a very quick check-in. So if you are looking to live with a roommate next year, again, make sure that you are having that conversation with that roommate or roommates and determining where you might want to live beforehand. As we are trying to move this process along quite quickly for the several hundred students that are looking to select, we want to make sure that instead of being in the selection room and having the conversations about where you might want to go, you're already having a game plan ahead of time. Make sure that you and your roommates arrive at the same time and during the best lottery number assigned. And we would then check you in at the same time. Depending on the process, and we're finalizing some of the last few steps here. So either might be that the two of you may select together at the same time, or that we might check both in but ask only one to continue into the selection room. So we will communicate that ahead of time prior to selection for all groupings. If both roommates cannot make it to selection, we just encourage you to complete a proxy form that we'll be talking about in the near future on this information session. So you will just want to ensure that you are represented in some form, shape, or fashion for this day. You will also, prior to check-in, want to make sure that you've electronically signed the room and board agreement on the housing selection checklist. This will be necessary before you are allowed to process through and may hold up your ability to select on time. So please ensure that through your housing selection checklist, you have completed the room and board agreement. After you are checked in, you will then be moved to a holding room. So you will be held in the holding room until a selection room is available for you. And please don't worry, we will still have students be picking in their lottery number. This holding room is just a place in which we can have you checked in and ready to go so that, again, we can keep this system as efficient as possible. While you're in this holding room, just please try and be patient. Understand we are processing many students at this time. But while you are in the waiting room, if you do plan to live with a roommate, again, make sure that you are looking at the available room spreadsheet that Ev had mentioned and remain in communication with each other. That way you can see what is updated and what is available for you to select into when it becomes your time. And again, these available rooms lists, the spreadsheet that you'll find through the links, these will be updated in real time. So you'll be able to see when it's your turn, what rooms are available to you. So absolutely take advantage of this resource to you in advance. So when it's time for you to select, you will be moved from your holding room into your selecting room. And there you will be greeted once again by another member of the Residence Life and Housing staff. At this point, you will confirm for one final time your identity and your information as it relates to housing selection. And this part is the quickest part of the day or the night. So please be prepared to share what your room you would like to select into for the upcoming 2020-2021 year. If you are planning to select into suite, please just at this time have a game plan as to who will live where. That way we can appropriately process those students into the correct rooms. And so if you are looking to live in South Campus Residence Hall and are identifying yourself as the person into a single, while this has been self-selected into your application, we will still want to confirm that. The same is that we will want to confirm who will be rooming with whom. So once we confirm your selection choice with you verbally, we will thank you, and at that point, you have officially participated in the housing selection process for the 2020-2021 academic year. Your selection will then be confirmed and made available to you on the My Curry portal under your housing selection information, so you will have that available to you within the next day. Once you've participated in the process, and this is important to note, once you have gone through and selected your room, you can no longer participate in the process again. And so if you had selected one room type but had changed your mind, you will need to make sure that you wait until all choices have been made after the conclusion of the housing selection process. You will likely want to communicate any sort of future changes to us through the reslife@curry.edu email address, but at the same time, for the most part, any sort of choice that you're making during your selection time is your final choice, likely until summer or the very beginning of the upcoming academic year. We do want to recognize that we are having this conversation through Zoom. In the most typical circumstances, we have these information sessions and have housing selection in person. Again, with the global and national concerns related to the pandemic, we do want to make sure that we are sharing that, things are and can change at any given point. We are, likely monitoring or likely living day to day, but we are monitoring things and coming up with game plans for what that might look like. But we want students to understand that we are living through unprecedented times. And as such, students should understand that the college may need to make changes or adjustments to the building use or occupancy based on any federal, state, or public health guidance. And that is in order to maximize the health and safety of the Curry College community. And so there may or may not need to be changes based on moving forward for the upcoming academic year, but anything will be communicated with students if changes are expected or anticipated to take place. So like I said, if you cannot make housing selection for your time, we encourage you to use a proxy. This form is available on the housing selection checklist portal page, which you can access this. This form must be, if you are unable to participate in housing selection, it must be submitted by no later than 12 p.m. on the day of your selection. However, we encourage the earlier the better. So what this means is you are using somebody else, a designated individual, to be able to select for you and represent you at housing selection. And you have two options to be able to do this. Typically during the in-person process, we only ask that proxies are designated students, but we understand that, again, given the unprecedented nature of our current concerns, both globally and nationally, that we may have options that are a little bit more inclusive for our student population. So there are two options for you. One is to designate a student, and the other is to designate a member of Residence Life and Housing. So if you choose option one, you then authorize a designated member of the Curry College student body, someone who you have asked and spoken to serve on behalf of you to select a residence hall room. So should your designated student proxy fail to choose a room at housing selection for you, or not choose a selection that you would like or prefer, you may not be guaranteed for the space for the upcoming year. All selections made by your designated proxy are final. So again, should your designated proxy fail to show up or fail to choose a room for you, you will not be guaranteed that space for on campus during the upcoming year. And any selection that you have by a designated student proxy will be the final choice for your selection. Or you may choose to have Residence Life and Housing serve as your proxy. And in that case, you are authorizing the Office of Residence Life and Housing to serve as your proxy and make decisions regarding your housing for the upcoming year. All selections made by Residence Life and Housing would be considered final as well. On this form, if you take a look at that, or if you are submitting, you will note that there are opportunities to give the top three choices for where you might want to live. And so that's an important facet to know. If you are asking someone to serve as your proxy, if you're asking someone in the Office of Residence Life and Housing to serve as your proxy, we'll be using those top three choices to then determine, based on your preference, where you might want to live during the upcoming year.
All right, so we understand that it's perfectly normal that you may be entering this process without a roommate at this time. In no way to guarantee that you may get a single room, or perhaps you don't want a single room. In that case, good for you. So in response to that, we decided this year to make a looking for a roommate form available to you all through the My Curry portal. It is a Google form that you basically answer some questions about yourself, so that other students may view it to see if you perhaps are a good match for being their roommate. It is very important that you are honest when you answer these questions. Don't think about it like, oh, well, I'm kind of messy right now, but I'm hoping to be a more organized person, because there's no guarantee that you will meet that goal, right? And it's just ensuring that you and your roommate don't have any extra tension or friction because they thought like, wow, you put that you're a super organized person and you're a slob, which is fine if you like living that way, but you just need to be honest about it. Like I said, the form is available to people to view. So by submitting it, you acknowledge that any and all information provided in the form will be made public to any and all students and staff members who view the list. Additionally, you will be acknowledging that the form is only a means provided by us for you to help you choose your roommate for yourself. The Office of Residence Life and Housing will not be using the list to match you with anyone, okay? That's pretty much that. All right, and now looking at tips. So the first tip that we have here is if you are using a mobile device, please download the Zoom app ahead of time to expedite your connection. The easiest way to use Zoom, I personally have found, is to use it on a computer application. If you don't have access to that, your phone app would be next best, as opposed to calling in or using just a web browser to do so. Of course, we understand that sometimes tech issues do occur, and so we will still be accepting people who need to call into the Zoom number or aren't able to do video, but we do encourage you to have video and audio. Please show up a little bit early, maybe 5 minutes early ahead of your time to ensure that you are all set. Again, allow access to your camera and microphone if applicable. Information will continue to be updated through your Curry email and through the housing selection checklist portal page. Try to log in perhaps together with your roommate or around the same time, because then Zoom basically tracks people in the waiting room as they log in. So it just makes the process easier for us and faster for you if you all log in around the same time, so that we don't have to scroll through however many people are in the waiting room. Plan on being involved in the process for about 30 minutes, like I believe Dan said, and please be patient. That is one of the most important tips that we can state. Of course, we understand that it's very important for you, this housing selection process. We get it. We were students too in college. But getting frustrated or getting upset because there's a technical difficulty or because you're waiting perhaps a little bit longer than expected won't hasten your process at all, and will just continue to make you more upset, right? So just be patient. And then check-in times will be made available in the near future, like Dan said earlier as well.
So that is the information that we had for folks available, that we wanted to make sure and ensure that students were able to see, hear, and listen to. And so we want to open up to any questions that folks might have that are a little bit more general to the process. We understand that students may be arriving or attending today's conversation with very specific questions to them as it relates to their individual suites application or their housing class standing. And so we encourage you to potentially utilize the submission of questions to the housing selection portal page. There's a little box out there that you are able to submit a question to, or submit directly through reslife@curry.edu. But we want to open up to any students that might have a particular general question that we can help answer that may or may not have been talked about today.
I have a question that was just sent to me privately. I'll answer publicly though. The question was, if I'm a rising sophomore and want a single, should I go to the single selection date or sophomore general date? You'll want to go to the single selection date. So that's a great question. And just to loop in a second question in here, somebody had asked if they were allowed to enter the single selection night, and if there isn't one available, can they join another selection? Absolutely. If you do not get a single, you'll want to go to the general selection date for your class standing.
If there's not that many like open juniors looking for roommates, would you be rooming with a sophomore, or would you go automatically to single?
So it doesn't have to be either. So you can choose a room by yourself that is not meant to be a single. You just have to understand that there is a chance that someone else will be placed into that room with you. We will not stop anyone from choosing the other half of that room. As far as living with a sophomore, there are no spaces planned on campus to be a junior and a sophomore spot together. We traditionally have senior and junior spots available and then sophomore spots available. Did that answer your question, Felix?
Yeah, because like I was looking at the roommate list. There's a lot of like sophomores who are wanting to live in Bell as well. So that's why I was wondering, would could you be able to room as a sophomore? Does that matter, or does it have to only be like junior and senior? Like if there's no junior roommates looking for a double.
Yeah. So it's not traditionally something that we do.
Okay.
There's a couple questions in the chat, so we want to make sure that we get to those as well. A couple suites related questions. So one in which 6-person suite, should all 6 people fill in the application or just the one person representing the suite? It can be only filled in by one person and submitted by the one person. So what I would encourage students to do is have that communication all shared either via email or get on FaceTime or any way in which all that information be collected, and then just have one person submit it. The person submitting it does not have to be the group leader though. All it needs to be is one person submitting and one person identified as a group leader. There's a question about how will folks operating the day know for suites that they're using the person who has the lowest lottery number. So with our suites application, we ask that all of the lottery numbers are collected within that one application, as well as which is the best lottery number that you plan to use. And so when there is whatever best lottery number that you plan to use, whether junior or senior, you show up during that time, and we'll be expecting you during that time. We only have so many applications and so many suites, and so it'll be a little bit easier to process and be able to identify. But again, whoever is the person that should be selecting should be the only one showing up into that time. The rest of the suite does not need to be or shouldn't be on the Zoom call at all, just the group leader. So if the group leader is selecting on behalf of the suite, it might be beneficial that you're all on a text chain with one another just communicating. But again, we'll want to make sure that that time is done relatively quickly.
I see a question about lottery numbers and selecting with a roommate. If you have the higher lottery number, you will want to attend that selection time for your lottery number with your roommate. So you will attend the selection time for the highest lottery number between you and your roommate or roommates.
And by highest lottery number, just for clarification, if your roommate has a number 5 lottery number and you have a number 100, you will want to come during the number 5. So the highest would be the lowest, if that makes sense.
Lowest, best, thank you. Number one
the
is
best
the
lottery
best.
number.
Yeah.
If a student had asked if you want a single, do you have to fill out a form before housing selection? No. You show up during your housing lottery number time during singles selection, and you may have the opportunity to select depending on if all singles are filled, but there is no need to fill out a form for singles. And we had talked about this just briefly before with another question, but if you are a group looking for suites and you are unable to successfully get a suite since they are all full by the time it's your turn to select, your next choice would then be to speak with one another and see who might want to room with one another, or attend housing selection for singles. And at that point, you would then attend the time that best works for you for your next choice, whether that be a single room or pairing off or living by yourself during general housing selection.
I see a question about first-year students incoming. You cannot select a student to be a roommate that is incoming for the fall. They must be current students that have paid their deposit and have a lottery number currently. I'm seeing some of these questions are also in our frequently asked questions document on the housing selection checklist portal page. So please check those out, as well as the available room spreadsheet is available and is being updated live currently. So if you are curious about what spaces are available to you by building and by gender, those documents are accessible to you currently.
Another question is, when will the link for the Zoom meeting for housing selection be shared, as well as the real-time document? So the available rooms list is currently available for students to take a look at and begin planning. That was shared through email as well as available through our housing selection checklist on the portal page. The Zoom meeting link will be sent out in the upcoming week prior to suite selection, and then our plan and goal is to be able to share the link as a reminder the day before that selection, if that makes sense. And so if we have if it's singles night or singles selection day rather, then we will be sharing the link out as a reminder the day before that. The same thing with suites and general selection. So we'll be planning on posting that through email as well as our portal page, giving students every opportunity available to them to be able to access the information.
There's also a question here on suites applications being approved before selection night, and how would they know if they're approved or not?
So we will, once the application deadline has passed on Friday, this Friday, May 15th at 4:30, we will then go through the housing suite applications and then confirm that they are approved and ready to go. So that will be taking place on Monday and early on Tuesday for students to be prepared and ready to go for the Wednesday. So great question. Yes, we'll be reaching out to students to inform them about that. The housing, there's a question about whether or not someone has paid a housing deposit versus their roommate choice has, which is a great question as well. To be able to participate in housing selection, you would have had to have paid your housing deposit prior to the housing deposit deadline of May 6th. That was the extended deadline. However, if there are questions or concerns, I encourage you or the person who may or may not have paid the housing deposit that you plan to live with, contact us at reslife@curry.edu, and we'd be happy to discuss this a little bit more further with you so that you are better prepared for what that might look like and selecting further. There's a question about lottery numbers that were provided. You will be able to find out exactly the full numbers of how many lottery numbers were provided to each class year when we share out our times for arrival to the check-in process. But what it generally looks like is a little bit over 225 seniors participating, a little over 250 juniors participating, and over 330 sophomores who are participating. And these are all rising class years, so the housing class year standing.
I see a question about, will there be a tour of North Hall? We will be uploading a fact sheet for North Hall. The floor plan is currently available on our housing selection documents. We will be taking some footage of a space in North Hall. So if you want to start by checking out the floor plan that's available, and we will get the fact sheet and hopefully some more visuals for you in our materials soon.
There's a question based off the past, how quickly does SCRH and suites get filled individually? They go relatively quickly. So in many instances and in years past, most seniors and senior-only groups are able to secure a suite. Those groups that are juniors or partial juniors with a senior number are generally relatively successful. Groups that are lower junior numbers, so that's the 100 and above, or maybe even a little bit lower than that, just juniors only, may not be as successful in getting a suite. And so we do encourage students to take a look, as Ev had shared, to have a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C. So if you're unable to get a suite, what are you going to do? Who might you live with? Are you going to do a single and try for a single? If you are trying for a single and you can't get a single, who might you live with, or where might you live with during the general housing selection? So it's important to have a couple different game plans. If your heart set is set on one suite or one particular room and someone has selected that, you're going to have to identify another space. And so I would encourage a couple different game plans for you as you're going into that process.
How many sophomores usually get to live in Bell? The second and third floors of Bell are reserved for sophomores, so that's about 64 rooms of doubles and singles, predominantly doubles. And then also a question about Bell, why are there more rooms for girls than guys in Bell? That has to do with the gender breakdowns of the class and how many applicants for each gender. So we try to make things proportional in that regard. Someone said, thank you, you're welcome. Thank you for thanking us. In Bell, can a junior live in a single designed to be a single for a sophomore if all fill up? That's going to be a play it by ear question that we will see when we get there.
So
Another question.
No, I was just going to encourage folks to go to the materials like the FAQs and the available room spreadsheet. A lot of your questions that maybe haven't been answered so far in this chat are available to you now and can answer yourself.
So a really good question about Suites application. Submitting it last night with friends, but it doesn't say it is completed on the checklist. However, did get a confirmation email. Yes, so the form that you're submitting for Suites application will not be reflected on your housing selection checklist. We have an internal technological system called Banner, which is really where records are kept for students and processes. And that does not sync to our actual application process, which is a particular form. So if you've received the confirmation email, then consider yourself successful in submitting that application.
Just looking at newer questions that are popping up, one person pointed out that colleges on the West Coast announced that classes will not be on campus for the 2020-2021 year. I would just caution you to compare Curry to colleges elsewhere, especially because different states have different measures for how far spread or widespread COVID-19 is and what measures they need to take. And unfortunately, to the end part of your question of what happens if Curry follows suit, that's very difficult for us to answer in this group. Curry is looking at a few different solutions and scenarios right now, but nothing is solidified because unfortunately we do not have the ability to predict the future and be able to have a plan immediately for that.
And I'm seeing just other questions on where to find a lot of this information like virtual tours and floor plans. That's all in the My Curry portal, the housing selection checklist page. You'll be able to find these linked. Thank you, Dan. As well as in some of the prior emails that we've sent from the Residence Life Housing account.
So you'll be able to find if you go to the housing selection checklist, so that's the student life tab, and please understand that you are looking at my view as an employee here of the portal, so your tabs might look different and your options for your tabs might look different. But if you go to student life and select housing selection checklist, you'll see that there is a couple different boxes that you're able to scroll down and look through. If you've gone on here and seen your housing selection checklist, you'll notice that this is very familiar to you. You'll have the dates for the selection timeline. We will then post in this same box the times for which specific to your lottery number will show up. Your Suites application can be found right at this link. If you're looking for room rates, general FAQs, and housing breakdowns, you can find that under the Learn More About Housing Selection Process box, as well as the available rooms list. That can also be found right in that box. And then for students looking to find a little bit more information about the virtual tours, as well as specific information about each individual residence hall, you can find that by clicking on the link that says, click here for information on campus residence halls. Again, this is through the My Curry portal under the housing selection checklist. You can find that at any time, but you can also please refer back to any email that you've received with regards to the housing selection process, both today and last week, as well as any future emails, as they will also include these links for you as well. And finally, you'll be able to find the roommate search preference form in which you are submitting your own individual information if you are looking and searching for another roommate. And then a list of the current students who are also looking for a roommate that you can then review their preferences and then see about connecting with them if there is a match. And again, for students looking to find out when they might log on for their specific selection time, that information has not been posted yet. We will be posting that in the upcoming day or two, and that will be located under the housing selection timeline, which you can see on your selection checklist. This will also be shared via email. We understand that students are likely receiving information in different ways than what they might be on campus. Generally, we'll have a lot of flyers out there, significant number of emails, but I assure you, if you review your Curry College email from us, if you frequently check the housing selection checklist, and a shameless plug here for our Curry RLH social media accounts, you will find all the information that you need to be successful through this process. We are coming up on our time today and recognize that a few people have left us. If there are any last minute questions, we encourage you to submit those within just the next couple minutes. If not, we will be closing out this meeting.
I have one last quick question.
Sure, go ahead.
So for the whole process, since this is all being done at Zoom, I know at least from my time, as a senior, May 26th at 1 p.m., is the way it's going to work, like especially with your lottery number, is they're going to kind of call the number and they just kind of summon you in a way on Zoom, and that's when you talk to the representative from there? Like, is that how they're going to work, holding people kind of? Because I know with Zoom it's a little tricky. I want to understand just the tech process, because I know in person it sounds easier.
Oh, in person it is much easier, and I can assure you that we have been trying to put our heads together as to create a process that students know and are familiar with, while at the same time really meeting the needs of the technology that we're currently utilizing. Zoom, I'm sure, is not necessarily meant to be utilized in this specific way. However, we are kind of finagling it to serve that purpose. And so what we will do is have students check in at a particular time. And from the point you are checking in, we're going to put you in a holding room so that we are able to clearly see that you are all set, ready to go and select. So very similar to the process if you were, as you shared, you're familiar with the in-person process. We're going to have you come in during a specific 15 or 20-minute time to check in. We'll be processing the check-in, move you to a waiting room or a holding room at that point. And then that holding room would act very similar to that second line after check-in, or the check-in table in the gym, in which you're waiting to go to the exact table. And so if you were to visualize the step-by-step process as it relates and what it looks like in the gym, they're almost identical. But I assure you, we will be processing students and having them select in their lottery number.
How do roommates, do I need to reapply, or how do I, if I had like a room before, how do I, is there anything I need to do if like I had a roommate last semester? Is there anything I need to do, like reapply or anything like that?
Are you a current first-year student?
I am. I'm gonna be. I'm a junior now. I'm gonna be a senior in.
Okay. So yeah, what you would need to do is have that conversation with a student that you might want to live with, if there's a student that you want to live with.
Well, there is the person I have already. The person I know who it was, or is there anything I need to like do another application or something like that?
Nope. All you would need to do is just arrive at the same time for check-in, based on the best lottery number that you or that individual has. We'll check you both in, and then we'll send you through the process.
Okay.
So no need to submit any sort of application. The only applications that we would need to collect in ahead of time is the suites application if you had planned to live in a suite.
Yeah, and I think it was just like the two of us. So.
Yeah, so just show up together, and then we'll be able to process you through that check-in process, have you wait, and then be able to have you select. All right, so we're going to go ahead and close. Again, as you can see on the screen right in front of you, if there are other questions that you might have after today's conversation and after today's information session, I encourage you submit them through the housing selection checklist. There is a specific place that you can find to submit a question that will be directed to our reslife@curry.edu email account, or you can go online and just contact us at reslife@curry.edu to share those questions, and we'll be happy to help answer them for you. But we encourage you, again, please make sure that you're taking a look at your emails, take a look at our social media account, as well as the housing selection checklist. And we have provided as much transparent information as possible for you all to be able to see. So thank you all very, very much for attending with us. We hope you remain safe. We hope you remain healthy. And congratulations on a successful completion of the spring 2020 semester.